This is our worm ranch. This is a very small worm ranch. Some people, it's called vermicomposting. You're making compost. You're taking other forms of organic matter and composting it by feeding it to worms. On large scale, people put like millions of these things, and they do composting on windrows. A lot of times they'll do it on a concrete slab, so the gophers and the other predators can't get the worms, and they'll keep moving the compost down to one end, because where you feed the worms is where they migrate to, and then they can gather it on the other end. We have a much smaller scale operation here. We've got one sort of commercially produced worm tower. This thing consists of, you can keep adding stories to it, and then we've got one homemade one here. It's got a few, you can't see them here, but we drill a few holes in the side to put oxygen in there. And what we do, you can start looking at some of them. This one, as you can see, we're feeding it vegetable scraps. And I just saw one of them. They dive as soon as they see the light. They don't like the light very much. They dive. The species that we use is, the Latin is Icenia fetida, but it's called a red wiggler. And this one we have, we've harvested this one for worms to give away to other people, but you can see just under the surface. There you go. There's still quite a few in there. There you go. See, they don't like the light, so they run away. And you can see lots of the little tiny white threads are just born juveniles. They reproduce very rapidly, and the reason we've got the cardboard over here is we're feeding them all on this side, and over a period of a couple months they'll migrate to the side where the food is, and then they'll leave the other side available. Now this one's still got some paper in it, but there are much fewer, quite a bit fewer worms over here, and then we can harvest that. And that's what we do, is we just move it back and forth. That's on this flat homemade. You can use, people who want to do this can use any of these, you know, go down to Lowe's and buy one of these totes, drill some holes in it, and then in the bottom of it you make a bed. And we're using the shredded paper from the mother house, and also chopped up newspaper. You take this stuff and soak it in water, and then squeeze it out till it's about the moisture of a damp sponge, and then shake it and spread it out on the bottom and make a bed. Then just add your worms. You might want to put a little bit of sand and stuff in there for grit, and then cover it with food scraps. And these things can eat about half their body weight every day. So if you have a pound of worms in your bin, you can feed them about a half a pound of scraps every day. Now they don't have teeth, so you're not going to see that stuff just disappear overnight. You might want to go a little over the half a pound initially, so that it begins to break down and makes a half a pound of this stuff that's already partly rotted available to them. This is the worm tower. This one's a little fancier. We put the eggshells in there, and once they get nice and soft, we kind of crush them up. They can use this stuff for grit, and it also adds a good deal of calcium to the castings. And this one, again, you can see once you go right over the surface there and just peel the surface off, you see how many of them are down there. We have a lot of worms. We have a lot of worms. This one, this tower, those are all juveniles that have gone up and died. They've crawled up here and got dried out and died, but there's still a lot of them left in here. And like I said, they reproduce exponentially. You see how most of them have migrated up here, and then you've got a few that have migrated around the side. But then we have castings down here that are almost ready to harvest. We just have to take out a few of them, and the castings are available. And you can tell by being here that this doesn't have if it's done properly, it doesn't smell bad. There's a lot of advantages to worm composting. One is that worms, besides just composting, they increase the microbial activity by a factor of about 10 over regular composting. So that it means you have extremely healthy soil when you add this immediately to it. Now these old castings won't have the microbial activity because they're still damp, and there may still be a good deal of microbes in there. But the fresher it is, the more microbial activity you have. And then there's a fluid that drains off, and this one drains off, and we call that worm tea. There's an old joke that if you throw that on top of your garden, you got to jump back out of the way, but it's not really all that effective. And to feed these, we'll do a little feeding today. This one looks like it needs a little extra food, so it's just typical kitchen scraps. And like I say, I'll crush up the eggshells because they take much longer to break down, but they will improve the overall consistency. Pretty much anything except citrus you can put in here. So we've got, let's see what we've got in here. We've got some apples, coffee grounds. They love coffee grounds. You can put in tea bags whole. I rip them open before I put them in, just to make it a little easier for them to get at. And the same thing with your coffee filters. They'll take that paper and eat it as it goes down. When we put this stuff, I don't have a water can with me today, or I'd put another layer of that on top of this. Wet it down, squeeze it out like a wet sponge, and then shake it over the top. And what that does is it gives them a little more bedding. They eat the stuff by and by, and it protects them more from ultraviolet light. Worms have an aversion to ultraviolet light. However, whatever worms' analog is of feeling pain, they experience sunlight as unpleasant, and that's why they'll dive as soon as it's just like we've got this light right here. And you see we've had it open for about a minute, and they've all pretty much gone subterranean now, back down into the castings. But there you can see there's a nice shot of how dense this population is in here. I don't know if you can see that or not. This is a very effective way for people at home who don't have a place to put a compost heap to compost the kitchen waste. You can do this down in your basement, or often, off in a storage room or any place else. They're quiet, they don't bark or anything like that. And like I say, they reproduce very rapidly. Each of these animals is hermaphroditic. And they've got a male part on one end and a female part on the other. And so all of them lay eggs. And I forget what exactly the turnaround is on the Icenia fetida, which is the red wiggler. But it seems like, I think it's 7 to 9 eggs per worm. Now they have to reach sexual maturity before they produce those. But if you think about it, if you've got every worm reproducing 7 offspring every cycle, and if that cycle consists of reaching sexual maturity and then beginning to produce, I think it's every 90 days or so, then every 90 days among all your adult worm population, let's say you have 1 pound of sexually mature worms producing 7 offspring every 90 days. Well, in 90 days you have 7 pounds of worms, and in 90 more days you have 49 pounds of worms. So that's if all the conditions are optimum and they're getting enough food to reproduce at the optimum rates. The temperature, these guys like it right between about 60 and 80. 70 is optimum. 80 is a little too hot for them. 59 is pushing it. This particular species can't be raised in the tropics. In the tropics, they use something called a blue worm that tolerates heat a lot better. But in temperate climates, this is perfect, especially in the household. So, yeah, this is something we do here just to learn more about it. At some point, we might do it outdoors on a much larger scale. We've got too many other projects in the pipe right now to do that. But it's also that we want to have examples of this stuff around for people who come down and want to see how it works.